got my mind on eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, and I'm wondering where the lions are. 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 I'm wondering where the lions are.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Where the Lions Are interviews. And today it's really a great pleasure for me to ideally travel back to Canada because we have a special guest directly from Toronto, and it's the contemporary music scene. She was born and raised in Toronto. She has been nominated several times for Canadian Folk Music Award, but her name is Italian, and I will pronounce it with the Italian pronunciation. So it's really a great pleasure to have today with me as our fourth lion, Andrea Ramolo.
It's a pleasure to be here, my friend. So nice to see you again.
Yeah, really. And as I was saying, you were born and raised in Toronto, but your family has Italian origins. And with Italy, you still maintain a very special relationship. So when I think of your music, I see this kind of fascinating interweaving between two really different territories and these very distant countries. And this is something that I would like to explore today. But I would start our journey, by the way, from the Canadian side of the ocean. And I would like you to take me, if you want, to the Toronto where you grew up. In fact, I had the honor of interviewing in the past few months both Colin Linden and Bruce Cockburn, and we talked at length about the Toronto music scene in the 60s and in the 70s. And so I was wondering what was and still is your personal experience of this city, and especially the music scene in which you grew up. Does it continue to be a fertile cultural environment?
Such great questions. Well, I definitely, Colin and Bruce, who I know both well, are older than me. So I wasn't alive during the same era that they experienced the Toronto music scene. I wish I was, because I heard some great stories about that era for sure, just in music in general, but also in the downtown Toronto, Queen West, Yorkville scene, where, you know, they used to have the coffee shops playing Gordon Lightfoot and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young. And I mean, this was like a regular thing. I'm a bit younger, born in 1980. So, and I actually came into music quite a bit later in life. I started playing guitar only when I was 23 years old, when my mother was diagnosed with her first bout of breast cancer. So she had stage 3 breast cancer. My dad had an old guitar because my dad plays the guitar, accordion, harmonica. He's very musical. And I taught myself on that. And then I entered into the music scene. So it wasn't until my mid-20s. And at that point, it was already in the early 2000s of the Toronto scene. And they welcomed me right in with open arms. I was a big staple, a big part of the Canadian folk music scene, which kind of encapsulated country, blues, folk, singer-songwriter material. And, you know, I would frequent venues such as the Cameron House, which has been around. Cameron House is an iconic music venue that's been around. I don't even know if it's like 40, 50 years now. The Horseshoe, which is like the oldest venue in Toronto where Colin and everyone has played. I've played also. There was the Dakota Tavern, and we would just do these regular residencies there, you know. I also started an all-female collective back in, I don't remember, maybe it was 2011, where we started for about 3 years, all female artists in the Toronto music scene. And we would play a weekly Monday night at this tiny little club. It was like this small New York style club called Not My Dog. And every Monday night there would be a full house. You could not even move there. And we would play on each other's material until about 2 a.m. and just hang out and learn from each other. And so those places and those people schooled me. They were my musical education. But even before that, before I became an artist myself, I was an actor in Toronto, and I was working at a club called the Orbit Room. And the Orbit Room was one of the most famous music clubs in Toronto. Unfortunately, it just closed down over COVID. It was, going strong for, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 years. And it was in the best musicians from the reggae scene to the the rock and roll scene to the top 40 scene, pop. We had everything in there. We had the satellites. We had some of the greatest players that you could catch live in Toronto. So I worked there for 5 years, and I sang in a cover band there called Stifler's Mom with members of some of the greatest rock and roll bands that were happening at that time. So I learned so much even just from behind the scenes, from being the door girl and the merch person and singing once in a while in this cover band. So that for me was my musical education, and that opened doors for me and, schooled me into becoming a touring artist, which is a very particular type of lifestyle. So, yeah. And I think that it's still thriving. It's definitely different post-COVID. And I would say even a few years before COVID, the scene has changed a little bit. I think we live in a world that's so oversaturated with art and so oversaturated with everything, with social media, with this and with that sometimes culturally as a people, we lose focus and it takes away the focus from the art and from the music. And also our experience in taking in and meeting music these days is very different. Back in the day, if you would put on a vinyl record and you would listen to both sides and you would sit down with the musicians and you would really grasp sounds that they were going for, the whole production as a whole. Nowadays, it's kind of like, okay, Spotify and this and that, and let's listen to a single here and a single there. So I feel like it's just very broken up, right? It's very divided.
Yeah.
So it's a different time. And I mean, I'm still making it work because I do like to be on the road and I do like to tour. And I think that that's one way of making it work, but it's definitely a bit more challenging in the last couple of years. So, yeah.
We are distant, but it makes so much sense also from my perspective. So, yeah, globalization. And so going back to your musical origins, and is there some song that you might describe or evoke that period or that inspired you to make the choice of becoming or taking the path of a singer-songwriter?
I mean, I would say that I got inspired way earlier than my 20s. I was singing since I was a little girl. I was always singing. So at school, talent shows, I would sing with the rock band. I remember when I was 15, I did a version of Stairway to Heaven and I was just belting it. And my entire school roared. They stood up and gave me a standing ovation. And I knew that at 15 years old, in that moment, I was like, I want to be a singer. I want to be a musician. This is what I want to do. And so it's always been a part of my life. Even when I was younger, I started writing songs with my friends when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So that was like sort of my, I was always very creative that way. I think that for me, the artist that made me really want to be a powerful female singer, performer was Janis Joplin. I found her cassette tape, the greatest hits of Janis Joplin, when I was about 12 years old at a summer cottage that me and my family went to. And I played it like 10 times a day, every single day. I learned every single word. And then I was like, I want to be her. I want to do this, She was and it's not even that, like, I love a beautiful, soulful voice. And it's, a lot of people would argue Janis Joplin didn't have a beautiful voice. She just had such a great, unique, soulful delivery of her lyrics, of the songs, of the passion that lived inside of her, that that resonates with me, because that's how I like to communicate my songs, through my voice, even though my voice is very different than hers, right? So I would say she was a big inspiration, and definitely her music, because her music sort of captured the essence of blues, folk, country, and singer-songwriter all in one. So I really like that. And my first few records tried to do that. I started off in that genre more so. And then after my 2 records with Scarlett Jane, and then my 3 other solo records after, my sound has changed. It's become a little bit more lo-fi, contemporary, electric on the baritone guitar, but still, your roots are always your roots. So yeah, I still appreciate all of those genres of music for sure.
Thank you very much for your answer. And speaking about encounters, but particularly what you were saying about is changing in your production. And I think an important meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, during this artistic journey of yours is the one with Michael Timmins of the Cowboy Junkies. So I want to ask you, how did it happen? And what was the studio experience with him as a producer?
Well, I love Michael. He's become a dear, dear, dear friend over the last handful of years. I met Michael when I was romantically involved with Tom Wilson, who you know through Colin Linden. We were dating for almost a couple of years, and I went in to record my vocals on Tom's record at the time because Michael Timmins always recorded Tom's solo project called Lee Harvey Osmond. And they've made beautiful records together. So I went in and I sang some backup vocals. I sang on a few songs that Tom and I co-wrote together on his record, Beautiful Scars. And I met Michael through that experience. And I loved the way that he worked. He's a creative, quiet director so that he allows the artist to shine and to be who they are. So he doesn't impose his creative choices. He creates a space where the artist can experiment and feel comfortable enough to be themselves. And for me, that is the best type of producer.
Yeah.
And also he's a mixing genius. So his mixes are phenomenal. And I love the sounds that he achieves and just his brain, I love the gooey, lo-fi, warm sound of the Cowboy Junkies records. And so my two records that I did with him, Nuda, which is a double album, and Homage, which is an homage to Leonard Cohen songs, a cover album, really. They're reminiscent of that Cowboy Junkies sound, which I really, really like. It's it's a record or a sound that you really want to sit down with and listen to. It's not flashy. And I appreciated that. So, we did the one album together. We loved working together. And I said, hey, do you want to do a record of Leonard Cohen songs? And he loves Leonard Cohen too. And he was like, absolutely. So we did that as well.
Was it hard to love you? I didn't have to try. Was it hard to love you? Didn't have to try. Held you for a little while. My, oh my, oh my. Held you for a little while. My, oh my, oh my.
And talking about Homage, and so talking about the Canadian legacy also in your music, I want to ask you about something more, if you want to talk about that experience and that project in particular.
Oh, yes, the one with Leonard Cohen. I mean, it was a labor of love for me. It was a project that I funded completely on my own. I wanted to take it as a challenge because, I never met Leonard in person, but I did live in his house in Montreal. I worked for a few weeks with his son, Adam Cohen. My band, Scarlett Jane, were hired to be his backup singers. So, and we played a few instruments on his gig as well, alongside the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. So it was an incredible experience at Place des Arts, this beautiful golden theater in Montreal. An 80-piece orchestra, a conductor in his tails and suit. Yeah, it was so cool. We wore ball gowns and it was so emotional walking out onto that stage with no amplification, but the sound was so pristine. And so I lived at Leonard's house while he was alive. He wasn't there. He was in Los Angeles, but even just to feel his energy in the home and the little bits of him. So his hat hanging in the hallway.
I remember the picture with the hat.
Yeah, his fedora hat. And of course his his bookshelf and the various beautiful rugs he had and his very simple style. I don't know. I felt his presence, and I've always been a huge fan of his writing. I studied English and literature as well as theater in school. And so, I I was the owner of one of his poetry books, and I just read a lot of his works, and I love his songwriting, and I wanted to try to challenge myself to find my own way into his words with my voice. I wanted to experiment with that. And I wanted to really sing his songs. And so I chose 10 songs. It was so hard to choose the songs because he has like thousands and thousands. But finally, after 4 months of listening to every single record back and front, I narrowed it down. And I didn't want to choose songs that were all completely overdone, meaning that you've heard them a million times. I did choose a few that were more popular, like Suzanne and famous Blue Raincoat, which is my favorite Leonard Cohen song. I love that song. We did a very haunting version of it. I love Michael's production on that. Yeah, but he did a great job. And also like My Oh My, which was the first single. Not a lot of people knew that was a Leonard Cohen song. It's a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more bluesy, and so we did a great version of that. So yeah, it was a great experience. I loved it. I got nominated that year for the Canadian Folk Music Awards for Contemporary Singer of the Year. So, it was challenging, and it was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to, instead of writing my own songs like I have for many years, I wanted to take this genius writer and take his writings and material, and I wanted to, like an actor does with a script, I wanted to do that. And I wanted Michael to be the director. And it was a great collaboration like the first one was. So yeah, I was very happy with it.
Wow. Really nice way to explain, to describe the project. I loved it.
Thank you.
And also speaking of Canadian ties, in 2017, I guess, you opened a Bruce Cockburn concert. So I would love, if you can, to be taken back to that encounter, to that concert.
Was it in 2017 or 2016? I forget the years because everything before the pandemic is a blur for me. But it was with my band, Scarlett Jane, and we played a festival, a small festival with him out in northern BC. And it was like northern BC. Like it's takes a long time to even fly there. He was amazing. Of course, he wore his gloves and his very cool shades on stage. And we played right before him. And he's a genius player. He's a great writer. It was not my first time seeing him live. It was my first time opening for him. But yeah, I know you're a big fan, so I'm sure you would have absolutely loved it. And but have you seen him live, Bruce?
Yeah, lots of times.
Okay.
Yeah, so, several times.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure to open for these great names because you learn so much from them. I mean, we're like still the students of these people, right? Yeah. They've paved the way for us. And also the longevity of their careers is something to admire so much because these days, as I mentioned, the industry is like a quick fix, right? Everything comes and goes so quickly, whereas people like Bruce Cockburn and Gordon Lightfoot, I mean, they've been playing forever and they just continue to evolve and they continue to reinvent, but still staying true to themselves and to their sound and to their music and to their craft. So I always am, every time I play with an artist like that, I'm just in awe and also very honored because there's greatness before you. And you know that, hey, if you have half the career that they had, you would be happy, right? So. Yeah,
they also had some privilege, I guess, as a generation, but this is the world we have to deal with and the music industry we have to deal with. And talking about that, as you know, every couple of weeks on my radio show, Where the Lions Are, I select a group of songs related to a theme. And there are two rules that I have to follow, imposed by myself. And the first one is to always broadcast a song by Cockburn because he's a little known artist in Italy. And the second one is to pursue as much as possible a balance between female and male voices. That is not always something really easy to do. Because the word in general but songwriting, I guess emblematically, is still deeply a male and macho word, the universe. And so I would love to know your perspective on these issues. if you would like to talk about them, and perhaps starting with some of your songs, like, for example, Chameleon from your 2017 album Nuda, or also I think Roadkill is a kind of resonating song with these issues, because in the chorus, I somewhat hear when you sing "I can take the wheel for a little while," I can hear some kind of political claim. Is it true?
Absolutely. That Roadkill is a song, and not necessarily a feminist perspective on it, although I am a feminist, and of course I fight for these rights. I mean, my entire record Quarantine Dream was made with all women in leadership roles. So from my producer to my mixing engineer to my mastering engineer to my publicist to all of my photographers, video directors, and the guests on my record, the featured guests, everybody was a woman. So it is very important for me to be a part of the shift that I want to see happening, because you're very right. It is a man's world. And it's not that songwriting is a man's world, because there are a gazillion talented, thriving female songwriters or female identifying songwriters, non-binary as well. But it's that the industry is patriarchal, just like any industry still continues to be. And so what can we do? Well, we can make these little decisions that are actually huge decisions. For example, I love Michael Timmins. Would I work with him again? Absolutely, I would love to. But is it more important for me to, in the future, continue to hire women in these production roles because they represent, I don't even know what small minutia of a percent in the industry? Yes, it's more important for me to do that. Even though I know a gazillion great male musicians, and I'm going to tell you, sometimes it's hard to find the females. Why? Because not because they're not there and they're not talented, because the industry and the world of music makes it difficult for females to have long careers, especially if, let's say, a woman wants to take the route of becoming a parent or a mother, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier for a male who just had a child with their partner, let's say, to go off on the road, right? They don't have to be stuck at home breastfeeding. There's this whole other world of discussion about that. But it's also to create space for these people. And then in music festivals, I don't even remember what the percentage is, but Rolling Stone magazine presented some statistics a few years back about how many women are headliners at music festivals. And it's still only like, I don't know, 10, 20%. And even you look at the makeup of the bands, it's like males, 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 males. Okay, we get it. But we're here too, and we're really talented and we're interesting and we have a lot to offer. And so it's, I can take the wheel for a while. It's a political commentary. The whole song is a metaphor about the way the world treats its artists, about taking a stand for what we do, and also being able to say no, enough is enough. Being able to put up artistic and energetic boundaries in order to continue to thrive in our careers. Chameleon, and also coming out on the record Nuda, those are all about, breaking free from the chains and finding our female voice, right, in this industry for sure. So, I mean, it's good that you picked up on those. But yeah, I think that, I speak from my perspective. My perspective is a female identifying perspective. And I just think that we need to continue to create spaces, not only on festival stages, but in leadership roles and production roles, behind the scenes roles, because, we need to encourage little girls at young ages. You can be a music producer. You can be an audio engineer. The woman who wrote the song Free with me, I wrote the song Free, the last song on my record, with two powerful women. One of them was Kinney Starr, who was like my sister. She's an incredible artist. And she produces her stuff too sometimes. And also Hill Korkoidis. She's my friend of Greek origin. She's an amazing, powerful woman. And she made Canadian history this year. After 75 years, she was the first female to ever win the Juno Award, which is like the Grammy Awards in the States. We have the Juno Awards to celebrate, musical excellence, for Audio Engineer of the Year. And she won the award based on 2 records she did for 2 of my girlfriends. One of my best friends, Sate, rock and roll, Afro rock punk goddess, and Tanya Joy. And so it's really important time in history. I think that things are shifting.
Yeah.
But we have to continue to, to make the effort to shift them. And the men in the industry actually have to start doing that too, because I show up in Italy and I'm seeing a festival bill and there's 2 women on the festival bill. I think it's time to, open our eyes a little bit more to what's going on in the world. And also, if you are in a leadership role and you have the power to select acts for festivals and for lineups and for concert series, you better be doing your homework and you better be making more room for us women.
Slow down, we're gonna cross the bridge now. We've still got 100 miles till we pull into the next town. It's late, watch out for the roadkill. The sign says there's wild lurking in the trees over the next hill. Will we make it there by morning? Will we have enough to give? I can take the wheel for a little while. I can take the wheel. I can take the wheel for a little while. I can take the wheel. I can take the wheel and try to get us there.
And you mentioned Free from your latest album, and there is also a strong political claim in that song. So would you like to introduce it?
Sure. It's a heavy song, and I'm not sure how familiar the Italian public is with Canadian history, Canadian politics, Canadian content, and like the racism that exists in Canada, because a lot of people are unfamiliar with it. They think, oh, Canada, this friendly, young, polite country, right? But really, we have so many skeletons in our closet. We have an age-old, destructive relationship, pitiful relationship with the way the government of Canada and the church, the Catholic and other Christian denominational churches have treated Indigenous people, the first peoples of this land, beyond the violence of colonization, which has happened in many, many continents. We know this, but, we have this horrible relationship where, they've just discovered over 7,000 bodily remains of young Indigenous children that were forced out of their homes to go to residential schools. These schools were set up by the government and the church to basically, quote unquote, get rid of the Indian problem. They used to call the Indigenous people Indians, even though they weren't from India at all. So it's just like these layers and layers of harm and destruction. And there needs to be reparation, and reparation only comes by telling the truth. So we're in this process right now where, the truth was always there and people were blind to it. And now people are starting to pay more attention and recognize that, hey, we've annihilated an entire culture, and it's time to make amends, and it's time to now really create space for reconciliation. So the song touches on those issues. It also touches on, we wrote the song after George Floyd was murdered in the United States.
Okay. Yep.
So it touches on just issues of racism and classism and socioeconomic repression, and also, homophobia and transphobia. And so it's a song about coming together and raising our voices for change and for good. And the most beautiful part about the whole project and this song was that we got to direct the video. Me and Kinney Star got to co-direct a video with our 8-year-old star dancer actor, who is the sweetest, most beautiful, talented now she's 9-year-old Indigenous hoop dancer who has become like my niece. And her name's Emily Ann Pitwanaquit. And this year she was thrilled because we won the Best Folk Music Video at the Canadian Independent Music Video Awards for the video. So, it definitely, it shows that when women come together, young and old, and come together for change and to raise awareness, it is possible through music, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for it.
Another dark storm to weather. Hold on tight, it's all right. You know we're in this together. Don't lose sight, it's our time. Too many sisters have gone missing at night. Mothers and daughters, we've gotta make it right. We can't be free, 'cause we're not all free. We can't be free, 'cause we're not all free. There's violence in silence. We need our voices to come together and sing out loud now. It's the only way out, and the only way to put an end to suffering. When our brothers can't walk down the street without being left to bleed out.
Earlier, I mentioned your track Roadkill, and from this cue, I would like you to tell me, if you're willing, a few things about your perspective related to the artistic life. Something you already mentioned here and there. So, like its beauties, its difficulties, also its contradictions, and especially what differences do you perceive when playing live between Canada and Italy?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, that's a 2.5-part question. So, I love this chosen career. I wouldn't continue to do it if I didn't love it so much. I'll bet its difficulties, because it's a complex situation, because it's like when you need to make music, you need to make music. And somebody said this to me once, one of my acting teachers. He's like, if you don't need to make art, don't do it. If it's not in your bones and in your blood and in every fiber of your being that you need to do it, don't do it, because it's too challenging of a road with, repercussions. And also, it's not, there's no recipe for success. So you need to really guide this career with your heart, because sometimes it really gets you down. So I love traveling. I love meeting people like you. I wouldn't have gotten to know you and meet you if I wasn't a musician, if we were both not musicians. I love singing live for people. I love the connection that happens between an audience and an artist, that conversation that's through sound and through text and through images. I love that all, and through energy, right? That real live pulsing. But I will say that I still believe that in most societies, especially North American societies, that our job, our vocation is treated like a hobby. And it's not respected as a career, as a vocation. And it is a vocation because we need art. Cultures need art to thrive. We need art to process pain and trauma. We need art to feel unified. We need art to be political, to raise our voices. We need art to express love. Like, we need art. It is a need. It is not a frivolous side idea, right? And so I have a huge problem with it, as do many of my friends who make art, because we feel it. We feel that, you know, that we're treated as hobbyists. And that trickles down if we want to speak about finances too. Like, it's hard to survive as an artist. You know, I was going on tour in Europe and across North America. I started touring in 2008. So 18, 19, 21, almost 15 years I've been touring. And the fees have not changed. If anything, sometimes they're lower. But the cost of living has increased, has doubled at least, you know, at least doubled. So it's like, if we want artists to thrive, we need to treat them with respect and we need to pay them accordingly. And I still think, I mean, we're lucky in Canada, we have government support sometimes, and I couldn't have made half of my records if it wasn't for that. But it's just a shift. It's a shift in mentality. And I think it comes from the top, you know, it comes from the politicians, it comes from people making laws, and people investing money. And so we need more of that. So yeah, it's a huge struggle, but it's definitely a romantic way to live. And it's a fantastic way to connect with fellow human beings, right? And the second part of your question, you were asking, what was that second part? It was a great, the difference between Canada and Italy.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I love Canada and I love my fans here. There's something about Italian audiences that is just a little bit more, they're just more there. They're more present. They're more involved. And just to travel the land of my parents, a land where I feel so connected. Coming to Italy. I love it so much. It just, you know, it's an entire experience. The food, the wine, the people, the smell of the sea, the humidity in my hair and in my skin, and the sweat on my brow. It's like, it's just, I feel more like myself. So when I get to do the thing I love the most in a place that I cherish, it's just for me double the pleasure, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, we have definitely, Canada has, I think, more of a more finances to support the arts than Italy. I wish that the Italian government did look out for its artists a little bit more as well, in terms of financially. Yeah, but I think that in their hearts, I think that the passion for art is there in Italy. I think that it's more so there. I think audiences, they get involved more, they clap, they sing along, and they're a little bit more loose when connecting with artists on stage. But I think that's a cultural thing, because Italians are just like that, right? So as Canadian audiences are very polite. They're very polite, and sometimes they don't get super wild. It depends on the crowd, but
yeah.
That would be my take on it. I mean, but I love being a part of both worlds. And that's why I feel very lucky, because I am able to speak Italian and I am able to tour there feeling comfortable and getting to practice my language and getting to sort of relearn my culture. And then also, you know, I was born here in Canada. So I do feel like I'm somewhat a part of this land too, even though I do feel more connected to the land of Italy. I was raised on Canadian soil. So I do understand the nuances of the crowds and the people in the public and how they react. And so, yeah, it's nice to be half and half.
Yeah, on the two shores of the ocean. And so we are, I think, metaphorically speaking, we have arrived in Italy. And so I wanted to ask something about a song from your duo with Cindy Dwyer, so the Scarlett Jane duo. And that is it's a song that I really love the most, and it's called The Wildfire. And so would you tell me a few things about this song?
Absolutely. It's my favorite Scarlett Jane song as well. We wrote this together on our first record, and the record was called Stranger. And this song is about my grandmother who we just lost about 6 weeks ago. She just passed away. And I miss her dearly. We were very, very, very close. I feel her with me every day, especially when I sing the song. So on tour in Italy, I was singing it every night to honor her and her story. And it tells the story of this fire, this wildfire that broke out in her farm field in Limosano. So we're from Molise. My father and my mother were both born in the exact same tiny little medieval town on top of a beautiful collina in Molise, nella provincia di Campobasso. This town is like magical for me. It's so old and it's so destroyed by earthquakes, but it's so beautiful. The trees are growing out of the old buildings. And, I still have family there. All of my great-grandparents are buried there.
Both of my parents were born in a tiny medieval hilltop village in central Italy called Limosano. The town was said to have been erected around 1000 AD and was built around a Lombard castle. It's a magical place and always has been for me ever since I was a girl. Limosano was once booming with inhabitants, but the absence of work and dreams of a more lucrative life inspired many people from South and Central Italy to travel to far-off lands and start fresh. My parents both came over by boat in the 1960s, my father via Ellis Island and my mother via Pier 21 in Halifax. Last summer was our first voyage back to the town together as a family, to meet our ghosts, to join our parents in walking the streets they once inhabited as children. The stories we had been hearing about for years finally came to life.
This is Via Borgo. Ehi, che cazzo? Ehi! Ehi! Benvenuti in Italia, porca miseria!
I always feel like I'm entering a storybook when I visit my parents' hometown. The story of a bygone era, though. It's a town almost frozen in time. And I've always been a fan of time travel.
And in the 60s, this was probably 1964, 65, before they moved to Canada. My grandparents, who were farmers, like most of the people in Limosano at the time, they would just light a match and they would burn their old crops down. They would burn the old crops from the year previous, and it was nice and rich for the soil. And then they would get ready to plant the new seeds for the upcoming year. And what they would do is that they would dig these trenches along the outside of the farm field, like a square of trenches. And the fire would therefore stay inside and not go over the trench. But this one day it was so windy, so the fire jumped over the trench. It caught onto some trees and it just spread so fast that they couldn't control it. It ended up burning down my grandmother's house, her farmhouse, and the neighbor's home. And I mean, when you are a peasant, like my grandparents were peasants, there was no money. There was never any money. So they were bartering, wheat and tomatoes and olives and whatever they had. They had like one pig that would last them the entire year for the whole family, So, they were scrounging to survive. When this huge accident happens, this huge damage, you can't pay for it. So in my head, I'm always wondering, is this the reason why you moved to Canada? Did you take off right after there? Because they did take off soon after that. And then they moved to Canada and they didn't like Canada. So they came back to Italy for a few years. And then finally they removed to Canada. So this song, Wildfire, it tells of my grandmother's story. It tells of her story of resilience and survival and strength and tragedy and beauty. And so it's a really special song to continue singing after all these years.
Church bells rang and life moved slow. People prayed for hope, prayed for rain. A woman, she stood tall and proud with a heavy walk, voice so loud, her body aching, she ignored the pain. Like she did the years before, right outside her farmhouse door, lit a match to burn it all again. The wind didn't blow, it didn't stop. Flame kept burning beyond the crop. It was ruthless, took all it could claim. Wildfire, she danced the night away. Took her by the hand, there was nothing she could say. Wildfire brought her to her knees. But when the dust finally settled, there was nothing but the breeze.
And talking about Limosano, you have managed to maintain a strong relationship with this little village in the south of Italy. And so much that this summer you were able to organize a gig over there in the village. So I wanted to, during your European tour, so I'm really curious to know what kind of experience was that, and was playing there, and so what kind of vibes, what kind of feeling it moves that concert.
Oh, it was just so emotional. It was emotional just to drive into the town. I returned my grandparents' photos to the cemetery. I put them on their parents' graves so that they could all be reunited. So it was very ritualistic for me, very meaningful and magical. And then the concert in the town we did out in the piazza outside of the hotel, where there's the one hotel in town where there's a bar underneath. And it was happening after the partita, the soccer game of Milano. And of course, in the south of Italy, especially, they're huge soccer fans. So all of the entire town pretty much came out. There was like hundreds of people. And I mean, there's only 500 people probably that live in the town. It's a very small town. But it was so nice to see parenti, relatives, friends, family members. They bought us bouquets of flowers. They bought one for me and for my touring partner, Sara. And they gave us gifts and cards. And it was just so beautiful, and you could tell that they were so grateful for this concert. And for me, I was just so grateful for the opportunity to play music for them. It was my first time playing music there. And I felt like I was honoring my parents and my grandmother in some way, just by being there to give this gift of music to the town. And even if I sang most of the songs in English, I think I only sang 2 or 3 songs in Italian. It was still nice to be able to be there, be present, and to do what I do and bring my love of music and art to this little town that I hold in my heart. That feels like it's my town too,
Yeah, I can say that
Yeah.
because we know each other. And you just say that you sang some songs in Italian. So I had a question about these topics, because you maintain a strong emotional and artistic bond with Italy as well. And for instance, your interpretation of Lucio Dalla's Caruso is really profound. And also you recently experimented with writing a song entirely of your own, entirely in Italian. And so I think it's really fascinating to think about what a language carries when you look at it into music, into a song. And for example, for me, writing in English, which obviously is not my native language, often seemed to some way it allows me to disengage from my ego and also disengage myself from a more rational self somewhat. So what do you think about this kind of interplay between language and music?
Well, I learned early on when I started singing in Italian, which wasn't that long ago. It was actually Colin Linden. It's funny that you interviewed Colin, who was a friend of mine, because it was backstage of a Blackie and the Rodeo Kings concert, that I had Colin's mandolin. And I was just backstage hanging out with the band. And I don't know how to play the mandolin very well, but I know about 5 or 6 chords. So I started playing Rose Rosse per te, Massimo Ranieri, just because it's easy to play and I knew the words. And Colin heard me play that, and he doesn't understand a word of Italian. And I don't even know if I was singing it very good, but he stopped and he said, wow, he's like, this is your voice. I've heard you sing so many times before, but when you sing in Italian, it's just magical. There's something special about it. And that's been told to me by a lot of people, mostly people who don't speak Italian, though, which is interesting because if you remember at our show, I tried to sing, and this is where your ego definitely gets disengaged. I sang my original song, Una Lettera, in Italian. And a woman came up to me after the show, and an Italian woman, and she says, you know, you're amazing. I think you're great, but can I give you some advice? She's like, you should stick to writing in English because Italian is not so obvious or something like that, the writing, which, you know, it's good to have feedback for sure. And it was my first song in Italian. And it's true, I don't have a grasp on the language as I do in English. And it is a different songwriting process because in Italian, like the writers like Di Gregori or Fabrizio De Andrea, Lucio Battisti, their lyrics are not banale. Their lyrics are very like poetic, and there's always metaphors and symbolism in them. And I know how to do that in English because I understand the language. I have a grasp of my English language because it's my mother tongue. But in Italian, you know, I have a very simplified understanding of poetry. And so I don't know what's profound and what's not because I don't know that yet. But anyways, it was so interesting because I'm like, do I need to stop writing in Italian, or maybe do I just need to continue working and trying to find my way into the Italian language in a songwriting, you know, with a songwriter's ear? But it's interesting because when I was in Germany and I sang in Italian, this woman came up to me. She's like, we love your English, but you're way better in Italian. You need to do an album in Italian. So it's just interesting that it says to me that the non-Italian speakers, for some reason, are so much more connected to the music when I sing and I play in Italian. And that tells me that it's not really about the lyrics that moves people, that connects people to music. It's about the energy, the feeling, the melody, the tone, the world that you're creating through music. And I think that language doesn't matter. And I think that music speaks beyond the text, beyond the words. So it's just so beautiful because I wonder if they can feel my vulnerability when I sing in Italian because it's not my first language. And the separation of my ego, like you're saying, I wonder if they can feel that vulnerability. And for them, that's really beautiful and fragile. And that's what they connect to. So that's an interesting thing to note.
Potenza della lirica, dove ogni dramma è un falso, che con un po' di trucco e con la mimica puoi diventare un altro, ma hai 2 occhi che ti guardano così vicini e veri, ti fanno scordare le parole, confondono i pensieri, così diventa tutto piccolo, anche le notti là in America. Ti volti e ti vedi la tua vita come la scia di un'elica. Ma sì, è la vita che finisce, ma lui non ci pensò poi tanto. Anzi, si sentiva già felice
lancia il suo canto. Ti voglio bene assai, ma tanto, tanto bene sai. È una catena ormai che scioglie il sangue di te bene sai. Di te bene sai.
But yeah, I'm still going to try and write in Italian. Actually, I have this Italian project coming up, which is not necessarily original music, but the music of Southern Italy, the folk musica popolare di Sud Italia. So I'm going to have to learn the dialect of Puglia, of the Salento. And so it's going to be another huge lesson, you know, lots of learning, lots of growth.
And keep on writing, please, in Italian too, as well, and singing songs in Italian, please.
Thanks, Davide. I'll try my best.
Yeah. And I have another question about writing, and this one is about co-writing, because also co-writing, I think it's a unique experience, a big and interesting also, because sometimes it can shake up the individual intimacy with which songwriting is often associated. So I would love to know your perspective also on the theme of co-writing and from your experience, obviously.
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of experience with co-writing because in my band, Scarlett Jane, we wrote every single song together. Everything was 50-50. So we probably wrote about 30, 40 songs together just in that band. So those were all co-writes. In the beginning, it was hard because when you come from being a solo writer and you're entering into a world where you have to have one voice, and we really did have one voice. We sang everything in harmony. So it was like we were this two-headed monster, right? We got really good at writing through one perspective. And sometimes, you know, there was tension. There was like, no, it feels like it needs to be this image. No, it feels like it needs to be this feeling that we're communicating. But we got really, really good at it really fast. It took a few songs, and then we understood that sometimes you have to kill your greatest ideas, your greatest individual ideas, to serve the group, to serve the duo, to serve the song, because the song is the important thing at the end. For me, the new co-writes that I did, I mean, I've co-written a lot with Tom Wilson, who was my ex-partner, and that was really easy actually to do. He's a great writer, and we kind of just polished each other's work up a little bit, right? We made it stronger. But a lot of the songs we wrote together were like a conversation between two people, like the song Hey, Hey, Hey on Nuda. We wrote that together. And we wrote Lonely on that record together. But Hey, 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 he recorded a version and I recorded a version. And it's about two lovers at the end of their relationship as the relationship is falling apart. So it was very interesting because that song foreshadowed our breakup, right? It's like when art imitates life and life imitates art, which one comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Hey, hey, hey. When I'm busted and I'm broke. Hey, hey, hey. Would you give this heart some hope? I've been looking for a way out and a way back into you. So come on, baby. What do you say? Oh, hell, it's alright if we can't find our way tonight. We'll just lie here anyway. We'll burn out the love light until the morning comes around and sweeps us both away. Hey, hey, hey. Will you love me anyway?
And then on this new record, I had a blast co-writing because I co-wrote Free which is a very group dynamic anyways. The message is stronger when it comes from many voices, right? The whole premise of the song is about raising our voices together, coming together to fight for change. So that process was, the entire process was the song, right? And that's how it was born. And then End of Time with Madison Violet, we wrote this song over the computer like this, over Zoom, right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was my first time writing a song over the computer, which was so interesting because you're not in the same room, right? And the song was about longing to be together with your friends, longing to be in community. So it was easy because we were speaking to each other in that song. And the song is about that. So I found that very easy. I think that if a song is very, very, very personal to you, like, for example, it was interesting that we wrote that song about my grandmother, Wildfire, but it was a story. It was a storytelling song. So it was a little bit easier because it's from an outside perspective. But for example, I have a song on my tongue and in my heart right now, a new song for my grandmother that I would like to write. It's sort of reminiscent of an Italian lullaby because her name was Nina, Giovannina, and Nina Nana is what we sing in Italian for a lullaby. And it's a song about putting her to rest, her eternal sleep. I don't think that I could write that song with somebody else because it's my song, it's my grandmother, and it's my ritual to put her to rest through music. And so that's very, very personal, you know? So I think I pick and choose what songs I write with people and why. And sometimes it's nice to have another ear, as long as they're sensitive to what you want to convey. Because I do find that it's important for an artist to be able to share their stories in their personal way. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily bring every single one of my songs to another writer, but I definitely love collaborating. It's really one of my favorite things to do. I love working with other people. So, yeah.
This was a really interesting conversation, I think. Thank you very much for sharing and for discussing with me on these topics. And listen also, I'm speaking to the audience, listen to Quarantine Dream, that is the latest album of yours. And we arrived to talk about that right now with the song Free, with previously with the song Roadkill, and all the songs that you right now you mentioned. And so I want to end this beautiful meeting asking something from that kind of experience, because you said that you wrote all the album during the pandemic, so on the computer, and also something for the future, what the future holds for Andrea Ramolo, and so in terms of productions, in terms of projects, and also looking at these two sides of the ocean you represent.
Well, Quarantine Dream, let's start off with that first. Yeah, the record was born out of quarantine. For me as an artist, I don't write every day. I'm not the type of artist that gets out of bed, has their coffee, and has the luxury of writing a song a day. You know, I wish I was like that, but I'm not that regimented in my creative life. For me, my songs are often born out of hard times, born out of struggle, born out of trauma or heartbreak or loss or something. And I mean, it was a perfect opportunity to write songs because we had nothing else to do. And in order for me to maintain my mental health as an artist and as a human being, I need to create art. So that's just what I do. So it's my way of surviving, I think, through hard times. Music is medicine for me. It's healing. And so this record, like all of my records I've ever made, come out of healing, come out of a need to process things that are difficult, right? So yeah, most of the songs were written in my bed alone with my cat, of course. He was my only company. I was living through a very traumatic experience with some downstairs neighbors. There was a lot of violence going on there, a lot of drug overdosing, and this was happening right below my floor in a tiny house. So you could hear everything. You could hear their violence and their struggle. It was like my heart bled for these two kids, but it was to the point where like I couldn't sleep at night. It was really, really a tough experience. So I wrote through all of that, you know. Carousel is a song on the record that's really the heart of the record. It's a very dark song, but I think it's important because it's a song about despair and about not wanting to exist anymore. It was a brief moment that passed, right? In this house that I'm talking about, this living arrangement, and during COVID, during a global pandemic when the world's falling apart. And it just felt like we couldn't get back to a healthy spot as human beings. It really did feel like that for many moments. I don't know if it felt like that for you, but I needed to write this song. And it's nice because you can look back and you realize that you did survive that moment, because the song is, and it's just a moment in time. And the song is the thing that pulls you out of that moment. So I love Carousel. I love the production of it. It's creepy and it's dark and it's all the things about falling apart. But there's still a little bit of hope in the sound of it, and that's what I like. I like to talk about reality. I like to sing about real life. And real life is hard sometimes, right? It's not so pretty. It's ugly and messy and painful, but also beautiful at the same time. So I like to explore both sides of life in that way. And I think that the record does that. Quarantine Dream, the title track, is all about, the way we treat each other, the way we treat our environment, the fires that are lighting up the skies and burning a hole in our ozone layer, socioeconomical issues, racism, sexism, all of that. It speaks about all of that, but it also speaks about how we can change that. And the simple way is by leading with love, leading with our hearts, right? And really not thinking with our brains and our pocketbooks anymore, because really that is what's destroying our environment. That is what's destroying human relationships. So so it's a hopeful song because it's like, this is my quarantine dream where we're here together and we're leading with that fierce love. Like, we need fire in our love. We need to ignite this love and move forward as a population, or else, this world is not going to exist anymore. So yeah. So, I mean, it's a record, it's a heavy record, but it's also a hopeful record. And, I guess what's next for me? I mean, I'd love to tour this record a little bit more because I'm not sick of the songs yet, which is nice because sometimes you go on, I just did an East Coast Canadian tour, West Coast Canadian tour, a 25-date European tour. And I have a few festivals this summer, and I wouldn't mind touring the record for another 6 months or so, but I'm really excited to move on to my next project, which is very unique for me. It's nothing I've ever done before. It's a project funded by the Canadian government, the Canada Arts Council, and I will be making a 6-song EP, a 6-song record, and a documentary exploring the music, the traditional trance, ritualistic folk music of Southern Italy, which is where I feel my roots lie. Even though I'm not from Puglia in the Salento, there's sounds and instruments and energy there and connection with peasant life and with the earth that I feel is in my blood and in my bones. And I'm going to bring this back to Canada to expose Canadian audiences to my learning and what I discover and what I learn along the way with these beautiful musicians and these beautiful dancers and these filmmakers that I'm going to be working with. So I'm heading to Puglia in September, and that record is set to be released in June 2023. And the film will premiere at the Italian Contemporary Film Festival in Toronto next summer. So that's what my next year is going to look like. And hopefully I can bring the band Kalashima, who I'm working with, to Canada for a bunch of festivals and a bunch of shows, and maybe play some solo stuff and some stuff with Kalashima. And, it'll be really interesting. We'll see what happens.
Took the words right out of my mouth. You told me, put me back up on the shelf, explored me, ignored make me disappear. I don't wanna be feeling anymore. I rode the carousel that got torn down in that small town. They rung the mission bell. Employer.
So thank you very much for this powerful meeting, for this powerful conversation, and yeah, go listen to Andrea Ramolo's music on his channels, but obviously buy and support music, buying her albums, her vinyl records and everything, and follow her up in the next projects. And so thank you very much for this conversation, Andrea.
Thank you, Davide. Davide, somebody wants to say hi to you, okay?
Yeah.
It's Lego!
Yeah.
Hello, this is Davide. Anyways, so nice to see you. Thank you for having me, really. And I will see you next time I'm across the ocean, I hope. My pleasure, Davide. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye. You too.
Wonder what Eliza, wonder what Eliza, wonder what Eliza, wonder what Eliza, wonder what Eliza.